Well, good day, everybody. It's Dr. A back in the garden, and I can hardly wait to share some stories from the garden. Because a garden is not just a bunch of plants. A garden is history, it's what you're doing today, it's beauty. But oh, I tell you what, there are so many cool stories from the garden. One of our most popular plants in the garden today is the hydrangea. And oh my, there are so many choices, colors, heights, species, and what have you, that we have no problem finding a hydrangea that we will love. But it wasn't always that way. There were some very early hydrangeas, essentially they were trailblazers for this great plant. And one of them was the Annabelle hydrangea. The story of the Annabelle hydrangea goes back all the way to 1910. And at that time, in a small town in southern Illinois, two sisters, Harriet and Amy Kirkpatrick, were horseback riding in the countryside just around their town. They were gardeners, and they loved looking at the native plants and other things that they happened to come across in their journeys. One day they actually came across a hydrangea. They knew it was a hydrangea from the flowers, but they had no idea what it was. And they were fairly astute gardeners, so the fact they didn't know what it was really piqued their curiosity. And like all gardeners everywhere, they took some cuttings, they rooted them, and they put them out in the garden. 1910. And as they rooted more and as they were able to propagate more, this little town there were hydrangeas all over the place just because of the sisters. Let's fast forward to the year 1960. That's 50 years later after the sisters' discovery of this really quite lovely plant. In 1960, a young man by the name of J.C. McDaniel, who was a respected woody plant expert from the University of Illinois, happened to travel through this town. And as he did, he saw all these white flowering hydrangeas, and he was an expert, and he didn't know what they were. So fortunately, his curiosity was piqued enough for him to knock on a door of a house whose yard included a whole lot of these particular plants. Well, it turned out that he had knocked on the door of Harriet Kirkpatrick's daughter. When JC asked, "Where did these plants come from? I've never seen them before. Oh my goodness, they're so beautiful." The daughter had no idea where the hydrangeas came from, it's just that her mother had found them somewhere. Well, that was not going to wash with JC, so he asked if he could take some cuttings and if he could root them and if he could propagate them to see if they were a plant that other people might enjoy. He was given permission, and about 3 years later, he had a number of plants that he had given to a nursery that were ready to be marketed. And there was no doubt that these would be popular. So they needed a name. It had everything. It had the ability to propagate, beautiful flowers, cold hardiness, exceptional longevity, but it didn't have a name. Well, can't have a plant without a name, so JC and others wanted to honor the people who had found the plant. That is, the sisters. And a lot of potential names were bandied about. However, what they came up with was the name of the town from which the sisters made their journey. The town was Anna, Illinois, and this plant honors the bells of Anna and therefore became known as Annabelle. Now, who would have thought that two sisters, a horticulturist, a small town, and a span of some 50 years result in such an important plant? Although a number of hydrangea cultivars has exploded today, Annabelle is still listed as one of the top 10 shrubs in American horticulture. In fact, the story is so true. The fact the mayor of Anna, Illinois officially designated the second Saturday of June as Annabelle Day. Pride knows no bounds. And there you have it, the story of how Annabelle hydrangea got its name. Let's thank the sisters, let's thank their eyeballs, and let's thank the people who knew that this was going to be a wonderful plant. By the way, Annabelle is easy to grow and dependable. It performs well from zones of 4 to 7. perhaps into 8, but it really is a much better plant in the north than it is in the south. To reduce wilt, plant them in a little bit of afternoon shade. And certainly it's a hydrangea, so provide abundant water. But if you need to control height, vigor, etc., they can be cut to the ground during the winter. They will flower the next summer. This is Hydrangea arborescens cultivar Annabelle, one of our native plants and one of our great American garden plants. I will see you next week as we talk about additional tales from the garden. This is Dr. A saying, see you then. I hope you have enjoyed today's story as much as I've enjoyed sharing it with you. Thank you for listening. For more information and more stories, go to my website, www.alanarmitage.net. If you go to the bookstore, you will see one of my most popular books, Naked Ladies and Forget-Me-Nots, How Plants Get Their Common Names. And another wonderfully popular book is Legends in the Garden. Who in the world is Nellie Stevens? These and other books on the website I think you will enjoy, and I hope you have a chance to take a look at them. Once again, thank you for listening, and I look forward to sharing another story with you next week.